I've decided after I finished my studies to enter direct in professional life and not to enter the world of research. Some of my teachers in Paris and Berlin were very disappointed, but when I finished my studies in 1998, I wanted straight to go into professional life, and I decided not to make a PhD, and then I've not become a researcher, and it means that as a matter of fact, and I told to Peter Bojanic, I do not have at all any scientific legitimacy to address to you today, and you will have to consider that my statement is a statement I'm giving from a very personal point of view, being a practitioner of public policies with a commitment to issues I'm going to address today from a personal point of view, but without either the legitimacy of a theoretician nor the legitimacy of a person being an authorized person. If I'm getting back to the question the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu used to ask, from which point of view I am speaking, I'm speaking only from a personal point of view, because I do not have any legitimacy to address these issues. But one of the points in my statement will also to discuss whether or not people without any theoretic legitimacy to address issues of democracy have to address these issues. So we'll get back to this point in the conclusion. The first point I wanted to address is because we're speaking of democracy, there is one point that is implicit in the topic I am going to address, which is the fact that our democracies, either old democracies or new democracies, are facing a crisis of representative democracy, crisis that we have to evoke both at the national level, but also for EU countries at the European level, because there is also a global issue concerning today the commitment of European citizens to the European projects. And the first point we may analyze are the symptoms. What are the symptoms that bring us today to express the fact that old or new democracies may be tired? One of the first symptoms for sure, and especially seen from France, is the decline of participation to elections. When you take into account that in many countries people have fight for democracy and do not use the right to vote when you have elections on important issues, it's a symptom that something is going wrong. Example given, last election to the European Parliament 2015, with a participation in Poland that was less than a quarter of all citizens that took part to the election, and in France less of 50%. Then another point is the permanent decline of the legitimacy of classical political parties, with a very strong issue concerning the increasing difficulties classical political parties have to gather new blood and to let enter newcomers in political parties. And this linked with the fact that we are more and more facing the fact that political parties may be owned by professionals that are living on it, and without a clear prospect in order to let some newcomers come in. And when you do not have in a structure, this is one of the basics of sociology of organizations, then your structure may be declining. And then there is also a third dimension we have to face, which is the decline of ideologies, because commitment to representative democracy may be also linked with the concern to global ideologies and to global pathways for increasing our daily life. What are citizens expecting of democracy? This is for sure concrete solutions to everyday problems, public policies being current and effective, but also a vision. And having a vision in a classical model of relative democracy was linked with the defense of ideologies. And what we see more and more in Western Europe is the fact that citizens are not anymore defining themselves as being belonging to one ideology or another ideologies. And this may also bring us to very concrete questions. How then may we strengthen ties at the community level? How may we work on a global belonging to a global project? Also, how do we have to face the fact that classical binary schemes in all democracies, conservative liberal in England or in America, left-oriented, right-oriented in France politics, may be not anymore the right clue to define what citizens are expecting from a global commitment to an ideology and to a global vision of global issues. And then, the fourth dimension of this crisis of representative democracy is for sure an increased lack of trust in politicians, with first, in Western democracies, the fact that politicians are more and more professionals that are used to get in political life and who may stay with long-lasting mandates one after another, and with then a very strong connectivity between professional politicians and technocrats, and this bringing more and more citizens to have doubts about the direct contact politicians may have with communities. And one of the facts that is pushing to this diagnostic is the fact that we see in Western European democracies that the nearest politicians are to citizens, the more confidence from the citizens they get. And we see it in France in the relation between citizens and their mayors, with a confidence that is remaining to the mayors at the local level with a community-based approach, and a lack of confidence to MPs, members of parliaments. And the fact that politicians are also facing an increased lack of trust is also reflected in the difficulties some political parties have to renew their personnel. It's an issue that we do not feel so much at the national level when we're working on national public policies, but at the local level. We saw last year in France, we had election in France last year for local governments, that in little cities, many parties had difficulties to have a whole list, because they saw that at the local level, the level of responsibility of the mayor is huge. The power mayors have in order to regulate everyday life are weak. And then we also feel, especially in rural areas, some difficulties to renew political personnel, because the responsibility is huge. And when you have on a almost a benevolent basis mayors that have to represent their communities in all the dimensions, with very strong levies of action, but very strong attempts by the citizens, then they also may be reluctant to renew their mandate. This about representative democracy. But another dimension also we should face is if there is a crisis of political theories in the age of globalization, with one very important dimension being in an open world, in a globalized world, to know whether or not political theories have still the power to change the world. I grew up in France in the 70s and the 80s at an age where people still had the belief that political alternance was a way also to change the world. This was the slogan of François Mitterrand in 1981, which was the first socialist president elected in the Fifth Republic in France after de Gaulle. And the motto after which he was elected was, "Let's change the world," basically. But today we see that elective democracy may be based on ideas, global commitment to political theories still, but everyday democracy implemented on an everyday life is more and more facing constraints, and I think one of the most important difficulty of the ongoing process of implementing democracy is TINA. With TINA is there is no alternative. Namely the fact that getting back to the back roots of elective democracy, you may in the campaign fight for values, for ideas, for schemes, for orientation of public policies, and you may 6 months after being confronted to having a government saying, yes, but now we have to implement public policies, we have to face the fact that public policies have both to be financed and to be long-lasting and sustainable, and then you may see the discrepancy between all what was said in the campaign and all what is going to be implemented after. And this is the TINA syndrome, which is for sure one of the main factors weakening elective democracy. Then another dimension is also, speaking of political theories, to see which is the scale of implementation of political theory. In the old world till the 80s, we thought that political theories were the backbone for thinking national politics, but also for thinking the defense of one special model of politics at a national level. And more we see that the backbone of democracy is not linked not only with the implementation of public policies at a national level, but also with what may be done at the local level. With citizens assessing the effectiveness of public policies at the level of local public policies. But on the same time, citizens are more and more feeling concerned by global issues, but not from a theoretical prospect, but for a very concrete prospect, one of the very important factors that have been introduced in the 80s between the reflection on common goods. How do we have to fight against climate change? How do we have to reinvent a process of industrialization being sustainable both from an environmental point of view, from a social point of view? How do we have to fight for social justice, taking into account what can be done at the local level? And this may be one of the key for connecting implementation of public policies at the local level with a global concern for global issues. One of the image I like very much being the image of the colibri, the teeny bird, being presented by the French agroeconomist but also global thinker Pierre Rabhi, who is going to promote the image of the colibri, this very, very teeny bird facing brands in the forest in Amazonia. and trying to get to the river and to get over the brand with only one or two how do you say good
yes,
carp of water, and being asked, but what do you do? It's a nonsense. It does not bring any concrete solution. And the colibri is answering, yes, but I'm doing my part. And this image is more and more used by civic activists in France in order to say, okay, if you have the feeling that global solution may be useful, then let's act at the local level, and let's act promoting the contribution of every citizen to a global action. And this means that maybe in order to reinvent democracy and to get back to a new appetite of citizens for democracy, it means that perhaps we should also ask ourselves, is the issue of democracy is not only linked with representative democracy, or if we have also to reconnect democracy with the backroots of democracy, namely what may every citizen do for the police, for the community, for the society, at the local level and at the national level, and get back to the roots that democracy, it's not only a formal process, but also a pathway in order to connect an ethics in order to act for the common goods and for the common well of everybody, with concrete action either at the local level, at the national level, and the global level. And asking ourselves if we have to go back to the spirit of the police, of the agora, of the debate on common marketplace, on global issues and local issues, then as also to bring us to think about what may be the contribution to the global debate of everybody in an open society, and what may be the part to the debate of doers, citizens that are experimenting on a daily basis to act, to co-work on concrete solutions on some very special issues. What may be the contribution to the debate of writers, publicists, artists, entrepreneurs that are facing global issues from an outside view? What may be also the commitment of intellectuals who do have neither the legitimacy of theoreticians nor the legitimacy of elected persons, and what may also be the possibility for each citizen to express themselves without being accused to be populist. And this is, I think, a very, very, very important issue. And I just want to tell you, I'm to be quick, some words about the debate that is expanding in France and in the Arabic world in the last weeks, after a very famous French-speaking Algerian writer, Kamel Daoud, who is translated into Serbian. After Kamel Daoud, who is a writer, an author, but also one of the most influential bloggers in the Arabic world. Kamel Daoud, some days ago, wrote a paper on his blog about sexual misery in the Arabic world, and stress the fact that if societies in the Arabic world, and especially in Algeria, are not able to change a relation men have to women in order to work on equality of rights for men and women, but also on new schemes for passing away of such tough relation between men and women, then some societies, like the Algerian societies, maybe remain blocked because a society in which men and women are not able to confront themselves on an equalitarian basis may be societies in which something is wrong in the relation citizens may have to common goods, because one of the first common goods is the possibility in our societies to have men and women working together on global issues on an equal basis. And Kamel Daoud, after he made this statement, was aggressed from two sides. He was aggressed from conservative people in the Arabic world, saying that Kamel Daoud was sold out to Occident, to Western Europe, to France, that he was not allowed anymore to think as an Algerian citizen, as an Arab, because he was so much influenced by Western views on gender equality. But he was also attacked by intellectuals in France, saying Kamel Daoud did not have to express himself on these issues because he doesn't have any sociologist referential, he doesn't have any political referential. He spoke on his own without proving that some theories are contributing to his discourse. And it's very interesting to see how the debate has evolved, because as a matter of fact, you have two debates. You have one debate on the consideration Kamel Daoud wanted to express, is, as a matter of fact, the question of gender equality in the Arabic world one of the key bone of difficulties for some societies to develop themselves and to open up themselves. But there is also this debate within the debate about the legitimacy of publicists, of writers, of intellectuals who are expressing themselves without having any theoretical backbone, without having any theoretical reference. On the same side, we see also that more and more people in France are absolutely disconnecting the question of political theories from the question of ethics for acting for common goods at the local level or at the national level. There is a movement that was launched last year in France, which is the movement called Les Faiseux, which is very difficult to translate. We could translate it into English by the doers, the one who want to act by doing and not to act by analyzing or by establishing a global scheme of action. And this movement is a movement who aims to identify at the local level all community-based projects for social integration, for access to labor market, for access to culture that are based on community-based approaches and with a will to connect all these activities in order to see what is wrong, what is right in experimentation of civic participation at the local level. And this movement is very interesting because it's a movement that is based on people that, for some of them, have very strong political commitments that are in line with trade unions, that are in line with political parties, but also people that are far away of all classical political movement. But all what these people, these doers, have in common is that they want to implement democracy, not in the way of elective democracy, but in the way of democracy as being a work in process based on the implementation of projects with a very strong retroaction and parallel retroaction between the doers and the citizens are working with, and with then the need to cut the border between people that are in charge and people that are receiving public policies and that are receiving benefits of democracy. And these people are then going to the back routes of democracy, namely the fact that a functioning democracy need to bridge several prospects on democracy, civic participation. What may I do at my level in order to offer solution for my community, for common goods, for reflection, new ways of political commitment, which ideas may come directly from doers, from artists, from entrepreneurs, from people that do not have any scientific theoretical legitimacy, and then how to renew the global outreach about political theory, because political sciences are not dead. They are in an ongoing process of renewing themselves in order to take into account all these issues. Is political theory at the crossroad between political action and civic commitment and political parties, and how may political theory help to develop new cross-cutting analysis in order to allow politicians, theoreticians, and local activists to connect all the approaches and to enter in a debate at the horizontal level where all people that are committed to democracy may have the opportunity to enter in a global forum in order to exchange their point of view, and in order also reaching far out of the local level, in order also to see which new practices, which new pathway for actions may be interconnected and maybe become part of new schemes for action. And then we also have to ask ourselves whether or not classical political parties are dead, whether or not we may invent some new connectivity between new political platforms and classical political parties. And also, we also have to ask ourselves if the punchlines of politics are going to change out of binary schemes. In France, we see that the classical system of having a binary system left-wing is not anymore in line with the concern of the majority of citizens. But it may also be wrong to say that in France, the new binary scheme we have to face is to have to choose between fighting still for open society or fighting against open society. Establishing the fact that the new border in politics in France may be between extreme right and all the others, democratic parties, may be assessing the fact that extremists on the right side may become the majority. And then we need to establish a new mashup, a new synthesis between all this line. And we also need to see what may be the contribution of doers, of civic activists to new bottom-up approach for politics linked with global perspectives. Because we see more and more that, and this may be paradox, that all laboratories of democracy at the local level are more and more connected to global issues. And one of the most important issues being the issues of sustainability. All the reflection on sustainable development, but also on social sustainability of our economical model, is encompassing both a global prospect on the fact that our societies are interconnected and the need to assess at the community-based level, at the local level, what we may do in order to act. And all in all, this brings us to the conclusion that I'm speaking from a French point of view, that we need in France more than ever to reinvent a social contract, perhaps to get back to the roots of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, but also to reinvent what a democracy has to be, namely not a formal process, not a way to govern linked on only the rule of law and the legality of political action, but also to reinvent democracy being a plebiscite of every day, based on the consent by the majority, by the possibility for citizens to get back to new paradigms, being inclusive, without going to Caesarism and populism. Caesarism from the point of view from the government, populism from the point of view of citizens that are as twins, both obstacles that our democracies much and more have to face. So these were my personal considerations.